The question isn't just how we build a better future. The question is how we protect it. How we ensure that what we build can't be hijacked, twisted, or turned against the people it was meant to serve. Because history has a pattern. A society rises, it flourishes, and then inevitably it collapses into hierarchy, into empire, into rule by the few over the many. Even democracy, as we've known it, hasn't been immune. It gets corrupted, bought, weaponized. The mechanisms of freedom are hollowed out and repurposed into tools of control. So we need to ask, what if the next civilization wasn't just designed to offer liberty, but to preserve it? What if the infrastructure itself could act as a shield against the return of tyranny? This isn't just a design challenge, it's a philosophical imperative, because liberty, real liberty, is fragile. It dies in silence. It doesn't go out with a bang. It rots from within when power becomes too centralized, when systems prioritize efficiency over dignity, when scarcity becomes the excuse for domination. Enlightenment socialism answers that with a fundamental reordering of priorities. It doesn't just promise freedom, it engineers conditions where freedom becomes the default state, where systems are not built to be controlled, but to empower individuals to control their own lives. It starts with the most basic Enlightenment principle, the sovereignty of the self. When people have guaranteed access to the essentials of life, housing, food, knowledge, healthcare, they're no longer dependent on the powerful to survive. Dependency is the first gateway to tyranny. Remove it, and you remove the leverage that would-be authoritarians rely on. You cannot be bribed. You cannot bribe someone with bread if they already have bread. You cannot buy silence with shelter if everyone is housed. You cannot force compliance with fear if the system itself prevents the accumulation of coercive power. In Enlightenment socialism, infrastructure is not neutral. It is a statement of values, a philosophical architecture that encodes liberty at every level. Not just in laws, but in layout. Not just in policy, but in access. A society where every tool, every system, every civic protocol is designed to decentralize power, to dismantle bottlenecks, to ensure that no one person or group can ever dominate the rest. Because power is not evil in theory, it is evil in concentration. That's the difference between tyranny and stewardship. The Enlightenment taught us that reason must be elevated over superstition. Enlightenment socialism teaches us that systems must be elevated over rulers. If your society relies on good leaders, it has already failed. We don't build for the assumption of virtue. We build for the inevitability of corruption, and we make it impossible for that corruption to scale. That's how you stop relapse. You build redundancy, resilience, participation so baked into the system that dismantling it would require dismantling the entire foundation. You build so that liberty is not held in the hands of a few, but in the hands of everyone. And more importantly, you make sure it's in the design, not the discretion. Because the difference between a free society and an authoritarian one isn't found in what it claims. It's in what its systems do when tested. What happens in a crisis? Who gets prioritized? What gets preserved? If the answer is capital, if the answer is hierarchy, if the answer is obedience, then that society is always one emergency away from collapse into control. But if the system is rooted in dignity, if the infrastructure is decentralized, if participation is required for it to function, then it cannot be hijacked. It cannot be ruled. It can only be stewarded. This is the immune system of the future. Not just firewalls and laws, but an Enlightenment immune response baked into the very bones of civilization. One that responds to power grabs by fragmenting them. One that responds to tyranny not with resistance, but with irrelevance. A system that simply makes it impossible for domination to take hold. This is not utopia. This is design. This is philosophy with teeth. And this is what it means to be serious about liberty. Not as a slogan, but as a system.